Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to talk about solving rational equations with 3 or more fractions involved. So this is a little bit different from before, but not too crazy, okay? So you're going to need your notes, a pen and a pencil, and a calculator. Our main objective is to make sure that we learn how to solve rational expressions with 3 or more fractions. So here's example number 1. Now, just as we did before when we added and subtracted expressions, we need to find a least common denominator. So to do that, we're going to draw our box again, and we're going to write it in each section. So my first one here, my denominator is 2. The second one is x. My third one is also x. And the goal in the end is to find my least common denominator. So I have to put each factor in its own spot. So here I'm going to have 2. Then the next one I have to have an x. The one after that is also x, so I put that in there. Now my least common denominator, all I have to do is bring everything down. So I'm going to have a 2 and an x, so my least common denominator is going to be 2x. Now after we've done that, we need to go through and see what's missing. So if I go through my first fraction, I'm missing this right here. I'm missing my x value. So over here, I'm going to take 1 times x. So it's going to give me x over my least common denominator plus my second one here, I'm missing my 2, so I come back to my numerator. I have to take 2 times 2, which is 4, so I'm going to get 4 over my least common denominator equals my last one. Let's see what I'm missing. I'm missing right here, I'm missing a 2. So I'm going to take 1 times 2, and I'm going to get 2 over my least common denominator. Now we can treat it like adding and subtracting. So I'm going to have x plus 4. So this whole thing is going to be x plus 4 all over. Now my least common denominator is 2x, which equals 2 all over 2x. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you're paying attention because it's kind of cool. If we look at this, if I wanted to get rid of my 2x's on both sides, I just could multiply both sides by 2x. When I do that, they just cancel out and disappear. So with that being said, from now on, after we get to the point of finding our least common denominator, we're just going to get rid of them right away. So for this one, when I rewrite it, it's going to be x plus 4 equals 2. To get x by itself, we're going to subtract 4 from both sides, and x equals negative 2. Now, once we get here, ladies and gentlemen, we do have to check. So checking this one, we're going to plug it into the original. And I'm going to have 1/2 plus, remember, anywhere there's an x, we're going to plug in negative 2. So 2 over negative 2 equals 1 over negative 2. So I'll have 1/2 minus 1 equals negative 1/2. And yes, indeed, this over here is going to equal negative 1/2 equals negative 1/2. They are the same, so negative 2 is a solution. Alright, so this is example number 1. I hope you had this in your notes. We're going to do 2 more, and then we'll be done. So here's example number 2. First thing we do is we're going to look at all of our denominators. Our first number is just a 1. So in order to find a denominator, we're going to put 1 over 1. Okay? If I just give you a whole number, or if I don't give you a fraction, put it over 1. Plug this in. My first denominator is 1. My second denominator is x minus 5, and my third denominator is just x. Remember, my goal here is to find my least common denominator. When I go through this first one, I'm going to put in a 1. Second fraction, my factor is x minus 5, so that needs that own space. The third one is x. That needs to be in its own box, and then we're going to go straight down. So it's 1, x minus 5, and x. Now we know that anything times 1 is just itself, so when I write my least common denominator here, I can leave that out if I want. And I like to start with my x, so it's going to be x and x minus 5. That's my least common denominator. Once I have that done, I need to go back through and see what I'm missing. So on the top, I'm missing an x minus 5 and an x. So when I come over to my first fraction, I need to take 1 times x and times x minus 5. Well, this one's not too bad because 1 times anything is just itself. So I'm going to distribute this x here. And I'm going to get x squared minus 5x all over my least common denominator minus, come to my second fraction, I'm missing a 1, but that's not really going to affect us very much, so I don't need to worry about it. This is important though, I'm missing an x. So I have to take my numerator times x. Well, 8 times x is just 8x all over my least common denominator equals my last fraction here. I am missing a 1, which once again we're not going to worry too much about, but this is important. I'm missing that x minus 5. So I'm going to put this here, x minus 5. We're going to distribute that 3 here. So I get 3x minus 15 all over my least common denominator. Now, remember from our last one I said we can just cross these off now. We're not going to worry about them anymore. From here, we're just going to combine our like terms. So I have x squared, negative 5x and a negative 8x is just going to be a negative 13x equals 3x minus 15. So I need one side to equal 0, so I'm going to subtract 3x and add 15. Subtract 3x, add 15. My new equation is going to be x squared minus 16x plus 15 equals 0. From here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do a C method. So I'm going to take A times C, it has to add up to B. We have 15 has to add up to negative 16. So I'm going to use negative 15 and negative 1. Put it into the box. I get x squared minus 15x minus 1x minus 16. Greatest common factor here, I'm going to get negative 1, x, and negative, oh sorry ladies and gentlemen, this should be 15. Negative 15. So if I'm going to have x minus 1 and x minus 15 equals 0, so x equals 1 and x equals 15. So once I know that, we have to, ladies and gentlemen, we have to check x equals 1, we have to check x equals 15. So we're going to plug it into our original problem. So I'll plug in 1 minus 8 all over 1 minus 5, which equals 3 over 1. Simplify this, I'm going to have 1 minus 8 over 4 equals 3. 1 minus negative, that's going to be a negative 4, so this will be a positive. So plus 2 equals 3. So 3 equals 3. That's correct. So 1 is a solution. We're also going to come over here and check 15. So when you plug that in, we're going to have 1 minus 8 all over 15 minus 5 equals 3 over 15. Simplify, I have 1 minus 8 all over 10, which equals 1/5 if I simplify 3 over 15. When I simplify this, I get 1/5, which equals 1/5. We have a match, x equals 15 is also a solution. All right, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to our last example that we need to have in our notes for the day. Same thing, check our denominators. None of them need to be factored, so we're going to plug it in. Our first factor is what? X plus 1. The second fraction has a factors of 2 times x. Those are separated, remember. And our third one is x, and our goal at the beginning is to find our least common denominator. So when we plug this in, we're going to have x plus 1 have its own square. Now this is important for a second one. I have a 2 and an x. We have to treat those separately. So I have 2 and x both get their own squares. And my last one, I'm just missing x. Find my least common denominator, bring everything down. So I have x plus 1, a 2, and an x. When I write my least common denominator, I like to start with my numbers and my variables that are singular. So I'm going to have 2x be first times the quantity x plus 1. Now I have to go back through and see what I'm missing. If I look at my first one here, I'm missing a 2 and I'm missing an x. So when I go to my first fraction in the numerator, I'm going to have to take 3x times 2x. When I do that, I'm going to get 6x squared all over my least common denominator plus, and then look at my second one. What am I missing? I'm missing this x plus 1. So on my second one, I have to take 6 times x plus 1, and I'm going to get 6x plus 6 all over my least common denominator, and that's going to equal, check out my last fraction, what am I missing? I'm missing the x plus 1 and the 2. So I have to take this times 2 and times x plus 1. Well, if I think about this, I'm going to do this part right away. 2 times 7 is 14. Then I have x plus 1. Now I'm going to distribute it. So I have 14x plus 14 all over my least common denominator. Now this is my favorite part of these ones because I can just cross off my least common denominators. Don't have to worry about them. Combine like terms. On my first one, I'm going to get 6x squared plus 6x plus 6 equals 14x plus 14. Now I have to get everything on one side because I have that x squared. So to do that, I'm going to minus 14x and minus 14 on both sides. When I do this, I'm going to get 6x squared minus 8x minus 8 equals 0. Now, if I look at this problem, first thing I see is that I can take out a greatest common factor. So if I have this 6x squared minus 8x minus 8 equals 0, I can take a 2 out of each one of these. So I'm going to have 2 times the quantity 3x squared minus 4x minus 4 equals 0. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, we can't forget this. Remember, our super annoying brother or sister have to come with us everywhere. So let's just make sure ahead of time we don't forget. Now we can go into the AC method. Now this time it's really important. I know we talked a little bit about our shortcut, but we take our A times C. So A times C add up to B, so I'm going to get negative 12 has to add up to negative 4. In that case, I'm going to use negative 6 and 2, plug it into my box here, and I get 3x squared minus 6x plus 2x minus 4. Take my greatest common factor, so here it's going to be 2. Here it's going to be 3x, here it's just going to be x, and negative 2. So when I set these equal to 0, I'm going to have x minus 2 and 3x plus 2 equals 0. When I'm solving this, remember I have this 2 out in front. I can get rid of that right away. Divide by 2. So those cancel. So I'll have x minus 2 equals 0 and 3x plus 2 equals 0. So x can equal 2 Or if I subtract 2 over here, I'm going to get 3x equals negative 2 divided by 3. X equals negative 2 thirds. So I have two options for answers. So what I need to do here is go through and I need to check. So I need to check both of these into the original. So my first one I'm going to check is 2. The second one I'm going to check is to see if negative 2 thirds is a solution. When I check it, I have to plug it into my original problem. So I'm going to have 3 times 2 all over 2 plus 1 plus 6 all over 2 times 2 equals 7 all over 2. So here I'm going to get 6 over 3 plus 6 over 4 equals 7 halves. I'm just going to type this part of my calculator, 6 thirds plus 6 fourths. I type that in, I get 7 halves equals 7 halves. So 2 is a solution. Now come over here, I'm also going to check my negative 2 thirds. When I plug that in, I'm going to have 3 times negative 2 thirds all over negative 2 thirds plus 1 plus 6 times 2 times negative 2 thirds, which equals 7 all over negative 2 thirds. Now I use my calculator a lot to simplify this one after I add it. So on the top I get negative 2 all over 1 third plus 6 all over negative 4 thirds, which equals 7 all over negative 2 thirds. Now I just type these in my calculator. So here I got negative 6, and then this turned into a negative 4 and a half, which equals this over here is negative 10 and a half. Simplify, I get negative 10 and a half equals negative 10 and a half, and negative 2 thirds is also a solution. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful, fabulous, spectacular evening, and I will be seeing you later. Bye.